on a serious note, I am relieved that on Friday the governor signed, I guess it was a legislation, actually, not just an executive order, to extend our capacity to hold these meetings virtually, and yours as well as community board chairs throughout the duration of the pandemic, thanks to clarification of the open meetings law. This is an option that we all agree we need during these difficult times. You'll hear more from me after my report later, but I do want to acknowledge some other new team members who are with us and maybe give them a chance to quickly say hello. I'm thrilled that we have Deputy Borough President Keisha Sutton-James here. Do you want to say hello, Madam Deputy?
Oh my, I love it. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, Mark, for frankly giving me this opportunity to serve the borough. I'm just incredibly grateful, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you.
Thank you so much, Keisha. And I'm not sure if newly minted Deputy Borough President Aya Keefe is on, but you will be seeing her very much in future meetings. And I'm thrilled that we have a number of our community liaisons here. Do you want to do the intros on that, Tricia?
That sounds great. So forgive me if I don't see any, if I am missing someone, but you should have for our first meeting of the year, all of our community liaisons whom the boards will know very well. I want to start off by just thanking April Adams, who is our Deputy Director still in the Office of Community Affairs here, along with Eric Quello, our other Deputy Director for the Office of Community Affairs. We have Isabel Abreu here, also our liaison for CBs 8, 10, and 11. We have Brian Lafferty on for our liaisons to 5 and 6. Andrew Chang should be on as well, our liaison for 1 and 2. And then if we just sadly had to say goodbye to Natalie Espino, who is pursuing a wonderful career in the arts. But if you're from Community 12 or Community 4, then you'll know me very well soon, because I'm going to be pitching in there until we expand our team.
Thank you. And also with us are some returning veterans. We have Lisette Chaparro, who is continuing as our Director of Land Use, known and it would appear quite popular to all of you. And I'm thrilled that our General Counsel, Adele Bartlett, is helping out in the transition, getting us up and running. So we very much appreciate you, Adele. I think we got all the team members from our office. I think we got all of them. That's great. So we're gonna
interrupt.
please, yes.
I'm sorry. I see Manny. Manny's on the screen as well. His picture's not up, but he's here too.
Manny Belliard. My goodness. Well, we are thrilled to have him. Manny, great to see you and hear you. Manny has been part of our team. He was been part of the council team for what, 5-6 years, I think.
Yes, sir. 6 years.
And Manny, you can tell us about your new role, but you'll be at the Northern Manhattan office, correct?
That's correct. I'm the Deputy Director of Constituent Affairs.
Wonderful. So, yeah, you're getting to know some of your excellent Manhattan Borough President team and many more who will be taking part in these borough board meetings. I'm going to pass it over to Tricia to move forward. I'm thrilled that we're already joined by our special guest speaker, the new Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg. We'll be hearing from him very shortly after a few administrative matters. And we're going to try to pilot some new methods to streamline our meeting today. We've heard from just about all of you that you'd rather these meetings not be 4 hours long if we can avoid that. So we are going to be trying to hold folks to a little bit tighter timing in the remarks. And, you know, before we started recording, I did acknowledge 2 council members who deserve extra credit for joining. And we'll be hearing formal remarks from both of them. But very quickly, do you just want to say hello and good morning, since this is our first borough board meeting of the term? We'll start with you, Councilmember Menon, and then we'll get to you, Councilmember Marte.
Well, hello, everyone. It is so great to see you all. Thank you, Mr. Borough President. I was thinking when I logged on to this, how many years I have been going to Manhattan Borough Board meetings. Wow. It actually started in 2005 when I chaired Board 1. And so it has been a long time I've been at these meetings. I think they're incredibly valuable. I've worked with so many of you that are on the Zoom, so it's so exciting now to work with you again in this new capacity, and delighted to be here today. Thanks.
And representing your old community board one in the city council would be Councilmember Marte. Chris, it's great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you too, Borough President Levine. I'm just really excited to work with my community board chairs. We all had dinner already talking about issues in the community, and we're just ready to get to work. And I know under your leadership, we're going to have probably the best years for community boards ahead of us. So super excited about this, and
I like that optimism. That is our goal. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Tricia, and she'll take us through our agenda. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Borough President. And also just wanted to give a shout out to Marielle Dela Cruz, who is another member of your team who's here. It's wonderful to have so many members of the MBPO here this morning. So we're going to go through roll call first, calling out the 12 community boards. We'll start with Community Board 1. When I call your name, just please say that you're present. Community Board 1.
Good morning. I'm Tammy Meltzer, Chair of Community Board 1, and I am present.
Thank you. Community Board 2.
Good morning, Janine Kiley, Chair of Community Board 2.
Welcome. Thank you. Community Board 3.
Good morning, Paul Rengel, Chair of Community Board 3.
Thank you. Community Board 4.
Good morning, Jeffrey LaFrancois, Chair of Board 4, present.
Thank you. Community Board 5.
Good morning, Vicky Barbero, Community Board 5.
Thank you. Community Board 6.
Good morning, Kyle Athai, Chair of Community Board 6.
Thank you. Community Board 7.
Stephen Brown, Chair, Community Board 7, and present.
Thank you. Community Board 8.
Russell Squire, Chair, Community Board 8, present.
Community Board 9. Oh, keep on going. Community Board 10.
Good morning, Cicely Harris, Chair of Community Board 10, present.
Good morning. Community Board 11.
Xavier Santiago, Chair of Community Board 11, present.
Great. And Community Board 12.
Guys are one present. Community Board 12.
Good morning. Thank you. Next,
And
we're going
very quickly, Tricia, I just see that I think we've been joined by none other than the great Gail Brewer, my predecessor and council member. Of course, she's on time. So I don't know if she's listening or if her camera's on, but Gail, if you want to say a quick hello, we did a little round of intros.
Hello, I'm running out the door, but I will join you when I get to the office in a few minutes. But thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Gail. Okay, sorry, Tricia, back to you.
No, thank you. Moving on, we're going to go to the adoption of our January 20th, 2022 Borough Board meeting agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to accept.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Thank you so much. Third, we're going to go to the adoption of the December 18th, 2021 Borough Board meeting minutes, which have been distributed to you all before this meeting. Can I get a motion? Is there a motion to approve?
Excuse me, one adjustment in the minutes. It did not note my attendance. I sent an email regarding that for December. Thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you. We can make that edit. Thanks, Xavier. With that adjustment, is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Fantastic. Then the minutes are approved. Next, we'll pass it back to our Borough President for a very special introduction of our speaker today.
Well, thank you. Before I get to our guest speaker, we've been joined by another newly minted council member, Councilmember Eric Botcher. Thank you for joining us. Eric, if you just want to quickly say hello, we'll do our formal remarks later, but can you hear me, Eric? Eric is multitasking. He's probably solving a constituent problem somewhere, as he always is. We'll get back to Councilmember Botcher. It is my pleasure now to introduce our guest speaker, District Attorney Bragg. Are you with us? There he is. Yes, wonderful. President. Thank you so much. So I happen to know our new district attorney very well and have enormous respect for him. We spent much of the last year or two traversing the same terrain in Manhattan. And I really come to admire his experience and his wisdom, and have already enjoyed partnering with him over our first 3 weeks. And I have really come to appreciate two goals that I know he's going to articulate in detail that I think are absolutely critical, and they're connected. The goal of making this borough safer, and the goal of making our criminal justice system more fair. And I certainly share those two goals. I think all of you do as well. I also believe, as the district attorney does, that they are linked in inextricable ways. And so we were excited to have him join us today to talk about his vision for public safety and criminal justice in our borough at this very critical time, so that you could hear from him directly, and also so that you can ask some questions. And I think we have, Tricia, how much time, because we want to be respectful of the DEA's time, and just so I can give our borough board members a sense.
Absolutely.
What's our schedule for this?
So we'd love to welcome the DA to speak for around 10 to 12 minutes or so, and then we'll allow for about 15 minutes of Q&A from the chairs and from our elected officials' offices, and then we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Wonderful. So without taking up further time, I'm really pleased to introduce my friend and our new district attorney from Manhattan, Alvin Bragg. Take it away, Alvin.
Thank you so much, Mr. Borough President. Still fun calling you that. Really, thank you so much for the invitation, because one thing that I really want to do is govern in partnership with our existing structures. This being a primary one, connecting so many issues are specific to neighborhoods. We obviously share so many issues in common, but really justice is individualized from person to person, and also from neighborhood to neighborhood. So thank you so much for the invitation, and thanks to all of you for your service and for partnering in the years to come. Hello to Council members Marte, Menon, and Brewer and Botcher. Great to see all of you. Looking forward to working together. I don't know the rules of Parliament as well as you do, Mr. Borough President, but I'm going to try to get in and under that 12-minute mark so we can have more time for questions.
Great, thank you.
First, let me just introduce myself by way of kind of personal and professional background to those who I'm meeting for the first time. So I'm a proud lifelong Manhattanite, a bit south of our borough president in central Harlem, is where I've spent my entire life, save for some education years, and my professional life has been focused on safety and fairness. I've spent most of my career enforcing the law as a state prosecutor at the New York State Attorney General's office, and as a federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York, working on everything from assaults and armed robbery and gun trafficking to white-collar crime, securities fraud, and public corruption. And one of the phenomenal things about the Manhattan DA's office is we have all of that. Unlike other local prosecutors throughout the state and country, given how dynamic Manhattan is, we have that full spectrum of cases that our phenomenal career prosecutors are doing. Also spent time during my career as a civil rights lawyer, with that also interacting with what I would say the broader kind of public safety, public health issues, bringing wage and hour enforcement cases, bringing cases about livability and housing and redlining, which are part of the broader public safety in my view. Our borough president mentioned sort of my dual focus on safety and fairness, and so as district attorney, everyone's safety is paramount. That's has primacy, and we are in challenging times. During the pandemic, domestic violence rose, gun violence rose, and we have a lot of work to do. I wanted to briefly, because I'm assuming some, at least maybe all, heard about a memo I released on my third day in office, and there's been some, I would say, disclarity about that, some of the things in that memo that I take accountable for, some of the rising confusion, but want to address sort of head on some things that have been said about it that are not true. But again, I take accountability for the fact that there's some confusion out there. So let me address a few things, head on. The first is, there's a provision in the memo that has been read by some to say that I'm not going to prosecute, armed gunpoint robbery. Nothing could be farther from the truth. It's harder for me to think of anything more dangerous than that. Growing up, I had a gun pointed at me 3 times. I know that trauma. I don't want anyone to experience it. As a prosecutor, I've done armed robbery cases, and so just wanted to address that head on. More broadly, guns are going to be a significant focus. This is an issue that is affecting multiple neighborhoods. I had a very significant 20-round shootout on my own block late last year. So in living this, nothing is quite as sobering as going past the yellow tape of a crime scene with your young children just to get home. So this is really something that's going to be a focus. One thing that we're going to do is focus on our gun possession docket, which unfortunately is already significant, but using federal tracing technology, which I started to use when I was previously a prosecutor, to turn gun possession cases into gun trafficking cases. So not only holding accountable those who are carrying firearms in our city, but also figuring out where that gun was born, so to speak, and how it traveled, where it's come from, and holding those accountable, who in many instances are sitting far afield from our neighborhoods and profiting off of our pain. Another issue I wanted to address was the notion that I'm not going to prosecute those who may seek to do harm to our officers. There's a provision there about sort of resisting arrest, and if it's sort of the only charge, you charge with nothing else. I said I would not do those matters. But anyone who's punching a police officer, shoving a police officer, attempting to do harm, I take very seriously. I've prosecuted those cases in the past, and I'm always very mindful throughout my career that I sit at a desk and do memos and then go to court, and while our members of the NYPD are out in harm's way. So I wanted to address those significant issues. And then also reaffirm the core commitment of the fact that we can have both, right? We cannot have people walking around our city unsafe and on our trains unsafe. But the fairness prong, and in some ways, it's almost a false dichotomy, because the fairness prong is one that leads to safety as well. We're all familiar from our own neighborhoods, and certainly from the stories in the paper of the person arrested on the 8th arrest or 9th arrest, who's done some horrific act. And I think most of us ask, well, what happened the first 7 or 8 times? And what happens now, this is our status quo, is that person goes to Rikers for an offense for 3 months, 6 months, and then comes right back to our neighborhood. And the same conduct happens again, and they go back to Rikers. And that is our cycle. It's really a rinse and repeat cycle that is not keeping us safe. I think it's we can attribute the disorder we see in many of our communities to that very cycle. And so we are at this very moment investing heavily in expanding our alternatives to incarceration, our services. The research just shows if you can intervene early on that first arrest and with significant services early in the life cycle of a case, that we can really make strides. So that's the other prong that has not been talked about as much recently, or when it's talked about only in terms of through the prism of fairness. But it is safety too, and I think in some ways it's the safety that affects more of us in our daily lives. Fortunately, the gun violence is concentrated, or unfortunately concentrated. But the disorder we see, I think, can be addressed really through significant investment in substance use disorder and mental health and other services. And I'll just kind of end on kind of two notes in that way, because I know, as I've already been to some community board meetings and talked to some council members about certain kind of concentrated areas. I know exactly the ones near my neighborhood, 125th Street in Lenox, 125th Street in Lex, where there's a really significant issues, and want to be working in concert with you and our borough president to flood the zone, where we could flood the zone with both social services and traditional law enforcement responses to determine who needs the services and who is sort of repeat offenders who are exploiting the situation. So looking forward to working together with you on that. And I think I will leave it there, Mr. Borough President. Really interested to address whatever's on everyone's minds.
Thank you so much, DA Bragg. And I am going to pass it back to Tricia to moderate questions. I just want to quickly acknowledge that we have been joined by two more council members. We have been joined by Councilmember Diana Ayala. We're really thrilled to have her here, and also we are just heartbroken at the loss that she and her family are enduring now. Her mother passed away, and Diana, I'm not sure if I'm not seeing you, but if you're able to hear us, we just send you our profound condolences and love and support in this time. And on a more positive note, I am also thrilled that the new council member from the 7th district is here. He's got impossibly big shoes to fill. I don't know how he's going to do it. Just kidding. Councilmember Sean Abreu, welcome. Really happy to have you here as well. Thank you. So Tricia, do you want to moderate some questions for the DA?
Absolutely. So for our chairs and for our elected officials, if you would like to ask a question, please just raise your hand and we will go in the order of raised hands. Okay, I see Jeffrey LeFrancois.
Thanks, Tricia. Good morning, Mr. District Attorney. Jeffrey LeFrancois. It was a pleasure being with you yesterday with the Manhattan delegation of the business improvement districts in what I call my paycheck job. So excited to be here with you this morning with the community boards. In Manhattan's Community Board 4 on the west side of Manhattan, we have the Midtown Community Court. And much of what you've talked about is services to break the cycle of whether it be recidivism or the status quo, which you talked about yesterday, and that was really important. And it is extremely important to CB4 that Midtown Community Court is reopened. We brought this up to Borough President Levine in our first meeting with him a couple of weeks ago. And I just wonder on your radar, if that's a part of something your office could be helpful for, because it's about services in the community, meeting folks where they are, which is a lot of what you've talked about.
So great to see you 2 days in a row.
I know.
And I love that expression, paycheck job. We all have so many hats and so many jobs. I guess one of them, if we're fortunate, is a paycheck job.
Yes.
Yeah, look, Midtown Community Court is, a big piece of part of what I want to do. I think well, I won't speak for all of the new electeds, but I'm assuming this is a universal issue. The building of teams is so important. And sort of who we're working with. And so one of the key people who's joined me early in the administration, who's going to be building out the alternatives, is from CCIs, which Shereen Crawford has worked with the Midtown Court for years. So it's very much on our radar. We're in, I would say, almost ongoing conversation with the courts about being in person, about prioritizing, about triage, so much of what we're all doing around the city. As employers and workers. So it's very much a part of the conversation. And it's a real challenge in our system. We're going to have a very significant backlog. We call it the COVID backlog of cases that have not been moving through. But we are kind of, I think, steadily and slowly, and we're in touch with the courts, getting there and hoping this last turn of the corner will be the last one and we'll be back. But the Midtown Community Board is very much on my mind because you said it's a gem, it's a great resource and a model in many ways for what I want to do.
Thank you so much for your question. We'll go next to Stephen Brown.
Thank you. And I too want to welcome all these new faces. I can speak for myself, Community Board 7 and many of the chairs that we're excited about a new administration and new perspectives, and we welcome them. So thank you. District Attorney Bragg, I think that one of the things or one of the questions that has popped up in some of our meetings is perception. Perception was brought up by Mayor Adams. So the perception of public safety is such a concern. And it is my understanding that some of the practices that you talked about, such as not prosecuting people that avoid fares, have been the practice in the past. And I guess the question that I would ask, or we would ask, is why publicize a memo, right? I mean, why not continue on with those practices and implement the practices? And I think we support many of those, but with perception being such an issue, I think some of us were sort of surprised that a memo would go out because perception is important. And I'd love for you to have a sense to educate us on what your thinking was about publicizing the memo.
No, I really appreciate that question. And like I said at the top, the rollout of the memo, I take accountability for it. I think it was not fully contextualized and therefore led to some confusion. The fact of the rollout, though, I think is a good thing. I'm a really big believer in government transparency and accountability. And what we have in Manhattan, in particular, those who practiced before us, is sort of a great variability from kind of trial bureau to trial bureau. You're right. A lot of this was happening, but happening in a way that was not maybe accessible to the public in terms of the norms and the standards and how we were operating. And so I'm a big believer. I mean, you go as a federal prosecutor, you go to the Department of Justice website, the manual was laid out. And so agreed, needed to be contextualized better. But I think the notion of putting it out there, particularly because when it's not put out in a fully articulated way, what we've seen, not just here, but in other places, is the administration of it has been inequitable. And uneven. The 2015 report from the Vera Institute documenting the racial disparities in our system. So I think it's important to put it out, but I certainly agree with the context. So one thing to put the fare evasion in context is you're right. That was happening. I would say probably to 85% under my predecessor. One thing that I would love to note as a footnote, and which we've done in the rollout, is that there is accountability, right? We have a whole menu of options for what happens if you break the law, and the question is just what we will incarcerate people for. You'll get a summons. The NYPD has the TAB, Transit Adjudicatory Board, I believe TAB stands for. You'll get a summons, and so there is accountability there. But the real thesis is that I'm a lot more worried about the violence on the trains than the fare evasion. And we've got limited prosecutorial and investigatory resources. We know the drivers of crime. It's a relatively small percentage of us, and I want to focus our resources there because I think that's what we're sitting around our kitchen tables talking about. We're talking about the subway violence, we're talking about the street violence, we're talking about assault, and I think there are other ways to address like the summonses that are used, the kind of fare evasion, to use that example. But completely agree with the manner in which it was communicated, and like I said, I'm accountable for that and pledge to do better on that going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Barry Weinberg.
Hi, District Attorney Bragg. It's great to have you with us this morning, and then I gather I'm seeing you tonight at our general board meeting for CV9. But I wanted to ask about something that our board has worked with the DA's office in the past, which is the construction fraud task force. And I know that for everyone, one of the biggest issues in this city is housing. And we have seen in the past relatively few cases of landlord harassment and endangerment of the welfare of children who are tenants be prosecuted, although we did see some under DA Vance. And there was an article, I think, about 3 years ago in the New York Times, how landlords routinely falsely self-certify that HPD mandated repairs are done, and in turn, HPD settles its fines for pennies on the dollar of what was actually assessed. And so it's clear that the civil violations issued by HPD, the fines, et cetera, are not always compelling landlords to keep their buildings safe and habitable for tenants. And some are even deliberately bad actors. And I was wondering if your office would continue or expand the work of entities like the Construction Fraud Task Force and those who prosecute kind of deliberate abusive practices by landlords.
And so in a word, yes. I mean, so the Construction Task Force does, phenomenal work. And what I've been talking about doing is expanding the scope of that work. The type of cases you've talked about are rare system-wide. The cases I'm most aware of are the ones we did when I was at the Attorney General's office, bringing, I believe, the first prosecution of the tenant harassment law and a companion civil case against a very large owner in our city. And so that's very much on my mind. Something to deepen the capacity. Some of the issues with the certifications that have been addressed, I think, through the law. I mean, something we were seeing was churning people and sort of push people out under our rent stabilization laws. But as you say, there's still other issues. And so very much on our mind, as we're sort of getting set up, we don't have a, dedicated, the way they're set up now, you're correct. They're focused on other issues, doing great work and important work. And one of the, the challenges coming in is finding the bandwidth to do these really important things, which is, again, not to sound like a broken record, but again, which is why some of the matters which don't have anything to do with public safety, which we're going to move away from, I'd rather use the resources, on people who are losing their homes than on other things that I said I'm not going to emphasize.
Tricia, if I could just very quickly jump in. I see we have members of the public who have joined us, which is wonderful, and are watching the live stream, and a few posting in the chat and have asked about speaking. And the structure of Borough Board of speaking is limited to Borough Board members, which are community board chairs and elected officials. But we care about everyone's perspective and value their input. And I would be happy to find a time to chat with some of the folks who are chiming in with questions in the chat. So Megan or others, if you want to reach out to the office, I'd love to find a time where we can chat about some of the questions that you're raising. Don't want to block anyone out. Just wanted to explain the structure of this particular meeting. Thanks so much. And maybe one member of my staff could message Megan with contact information for scheduling. And now I'll pass it back to you, Tricia. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And we'll make sure to put liaisons and I will also put my email in the chat so that everybody has it. This is certainly not anybody's only opportunity to reach out and engage with the office. And it's important that everybody has our contact information anyways. We'll go on to Xavier Santiago.
Good morning, District Attorney Bragan. Thank you for attending our full board earlier this week. Since that meeting, we've had a lot of community members reach out, and we again appreciate your willingness and your staff to be very engaged with our community, especially given the inequitable application of resources, whether it's harm reduction services and then comes to prosecution, the chasing down gun crime here in the community. And as you've probably seen in the news, and if you've communicated with the 23rd and 25th precinct, we've retrieved guns that have been from South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and as far north as Maine. So a couple questions with the intersectionality about substance abuse, drug dealing, gang crew violence. A lot of the community members have expressed to us, and which is why we're taking it on board and have been and exploring since we've had the bail reform that passed, I think about 2 years ago. So how are you going to handle issues such as not the substance users who are the ones who are being afflicted? They're the ones with the illness. These are the people we need to be helping. How are you going to prosecute the dealers who basically since that time have had no fear and have literally looked at the police officers and said, I'll be out getting my coin in another hour or two. And they have, and I guess that issue, and also too with the gang violence and how that will play when it comes to our NYCHA housing and the crews that are at battle and at odds with each other, because the families are very concerned there. And they, I think, would like to hear a little bit more about that. And I know you're just getting your feet under and getting out there. So I think that's something that was expressed, and I fielded a series of calls regarding that. So if you would be willing to speak on that, I'd appreciate it.
No, definitely, and I'm also happy to follow up directly. If people are asking you, I'm happy to also, we want to convene a group that's specifically issued about this and talk. I'll do them in just the order you asked them. So the drug trafficking is my theory on those, which I've employed throughout my career, is if you follow the money and the drugs, they take you to the people who need to be holding accountable. You build significant cases and you disrupt and dismantle enterprises. That's not just something from a textbook. I mean, one of the most significant cases I did as a federal prosecutor was prosecuting people who were laundering millions of dollars for a very, very violent organization. And as we were removing people who were moving drugs and money on the street level, the needle wasn't moved at all, because those folks are replaced sometimes before the sun goes down. But we pressed on and ultimately built a case against the person who was misprofiting the most and funneling millions of dollars through what appeared to be a legitimate business to some, but we were able to show it was not. Convicted that person, and he got a sentence of about 20 years in jail. And so that's the kind of cases I want to build. Again, it's that's when I'm talking about resource allocation. You do that case, and I did that case in partnership with the DEA, our federal drug partners. And they told me, they say, hey, look, we were able to see on the street the effects of that case in a way that you just don't see if you're just removing the last person in the chain. The gang cases are more challenging because the drug organizations are in the business of making money, and so we can approach it like a traditional structured hierarchical organization that we dismantle. A lot of the activity we're seeing with our youth now is not driven by money. It's driven by grudges, it's driven by turf, and is therefore harder to dismantle from a law enforcement perspective. So I think the main thing to do there, and this is why I started with the issue of guns, is getting the guns off. So folks who are carrying guns, important, we're going to address those, arrest those folks, hold them accountable. But then, as I said up top, and maybe I'll go into a little more detail, we now, we can trace the gun, and we can get a gun, we can tell you, where, and you mentioned, some states, we can mention, where it came from with specificity. How many other illegal guns were bought and then sort of delivered. If it's a gun that's been fired, we can use technology on shell casings and see how else has been fired. I met just yesterday, with the U.S. attorney in the district, and we're going to be coordinating. I mean, one thing about having a career in law enforcement is I know how the attorney generals work. I know how the federal government works, and this is something, guns travel. So something that we're going to need a high level of coordination on. But it does start here on our streets, starting with the people who are possessing the guns, holding them accountable, and then building out from there. So I think that's a different, newer model, but we've got the technology to really tackle that problem. So we're going to do both, and I'm happy to talk. And our kind of community partnerships folks, we're always available to talk about what we are doing and what we should be doing.
And thank you very much for that. And one thing, a parting note I would recommend is, and I'm sure it's on your radar, but if you could prime your staff with ghost guns that are now on the rise, because those are harder to trace technologically, even right down to the software that's used to written them. So thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing you next month.
Yeah. And so I'll say, just because you raised it, and it is a significant issue. So talk about it for a moment. We can't do what I just said, the tracing on ghost guns, and that's the problem. But what we can do is look at the component parts and be very creative about how we're tracking the sale of those and then enforcing that. And we've got some recent legislation that is going to help us in that endeavor. So yeah, happy to talk more about that as well.
Thank you.
Great. And the last question will come from Tammy Meltzer.
Good morning. Thank you so much, District Attorney Bragg, for joining us, and what a great way to start the year. I want to take it down from some of the most difficult crimes that we talk about down to the quality of life on the street. Clearly, through the pandemic, with the lack of business people around, many different things have started to surge. It seemed very low level that our statutory offenses that definitely affect the quality of life for people here don't seem to be followed up on yet. And so what I'm asking is the street life statutory offenses, like
Tammy, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Looks like Alvin, are you having issues with audio there? I don't think he can hear you.
You can hear me, right?
I can't hear you, yes. Yeah, he can't hear us.
My luck.
I see that Jordan Stockdale's on. I wonder if they can help.
He's talking to somebody, I think.
Okay.
This is why I miss in-person meetings.
Although my commute was very nice. And the distance to the coffee pot is extremely short.
I had an issue happening with my computer, so I switched to Jordan Stockdale's, and I couldn't. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question. When something just my
Okay.
volume
Great.
went out.
I gotcha. No problem. Seriously. Well, thank you and welcome for coming. I'll skip all that part. What I wanted to focus on and ask about from the most serious down to the lowest level. So we hear that the NYPD is generally not writing tickets for low-level offenses, that are statutorily offensive and but they're not being enforced. So I'm talking about everything as simple as riding bicycles on the sidewalks, which is an intense issue down by CB1 and in other areas. I'm talking about, the street gangs of riders that blow down the West Side Highway with not stopping at any traffic lights, which endangers every pedestrian trying to cross back and forth. These are low level. Is it true that those are not to be prosecuted? Where's the nuance that you're working on here with NYPD? And, if it's below the misdemeanor, is it not prosecutable? Is that what result for legal guidance have we gotten on this? Because when we are hoping to have all of our tourists back and everyone else back, we need to ensure that there is a quality of life review and that the offenses will be enforced.
Yeah. So no, and thank you, because I talk a lot about guns because it's, I make things for the obvious reasons, but this is very important too. I would sort of say what I said about fare evasion, that it's sort of the spectrum. And so we can't have no accountability for a lot of this. There are governmental responses, either civil or administrative, and partnering with NYPD on those is something I plan to do. And I think we've got to divide those into sort of two categories. There are folks who are just flouting the law repeatedly, and we've got to hold them accountable. And then there are others who are, doing stuff as a result of addiction and mental health. And so I would divide those into sort of two categories. But yeah, we can't have no response. The question is for what we use our sort of incarceration. But I would say for the riders, for example, like I view that as a public safety issue. I mean, that's not just also happening down in CB1. That's happening up, in Inwood and Washington Heights. I mean, I almost got run over, on the sidewalk by a motorized bicycle, like the other day. So I view that as a public safety issue. I know that there's some issues with enforcement in terms of you've got, bikes of, 50 people on bikes riding, and the police chase them. That could create more of a vehicular issue. My thought on that, which I'm talking to NYPD about, is that a lot of those bikes have stolen tags. They are moving in packs, and I think we can do things in terms of before they get rolling. I'm going to defer to the NYPD on once they're in motion and the safety balance between chasing them and not. But much like I mentioned on sort of the drug operation, it's the kind of thing where if you follow the contraband or follow the stolen license, you can build an investigation and hold these folks accountable. And I view that as a public safety issue, right? That's an accident, a death waiting to happen that we can avoid.
And so I guess my question is, would NYPD be then directed again to write tickets and try and enforce quality of life and public safety, which is sorely lacking at the moment?
Yeah. So I'm going to defer to the NYPD on again how in the moment is sort of a moving vehicle and the safety of doing that. But I can certainly, mindful of this conversation, go back. I'm talking to our law enforcement partners basically every single day and speak with them about what they believe is the best enforcement here and how I can complement their efforts from a prosecutorial perspective.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much again, DA Bragg, for joining us today. And we just for those who are able to see the chat, April and Eric have both put their contact information in, but for anybody who is viewing on Facebook or YouTube or any other outlet and can't see the chat, then I'm just going to also give my email out for any additional questions. My email is TSHIMAMURA, so T Shimamura, my last name, at manhattanbp.nyc.gov. We're going to continue on with the next item on our agenda, which is the report from our borough president.
Well, thank you, Tricia, and thank you, DA Bragg. We are grateful that you came here so early in your tenure, and would love to have you back to update us as this work continues.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and certainly, please, I see some questions in the chat for me. Happy to you connect me with those folks. Happy to follow up. But thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir. Well, I'd like to briefly update you on the whirlwind 3 weeks almost of my early tenure in office. I don't think any of us imagined that in early 2022 we'd still be in the grips of this pandemic, much less that the first week of this year would be in some ways a record-breaking peak for COVID, really an astounding Omicron wave that we've endured here. And that really has defined much of our early time. We put out a plan early on January 3rd, a 16-point plan to tackle this Omicron wave, focusing on everything from expanding access to testing, both testing sites and at-home tests, expanding access to other resources like high-quality masks, calling for expansion of vaccine protocols, including on domestic flights, calling for the creation of a portal where people can report the results of their own home self-tests. Like so many of you, I got COVID in late December. Probably half of you on this call have as well. I hope you're all doing well. But in my case, my case doesn't appear in the official statistics because there's no easy way for me to report that. So it's one of the things we called for in our 16-point plan. And we also took action on the ground to help connect Manhattanites to the resources they need in this pandemic. We opened a daily COVID testing site at our Northern Manhattan office. It's still up and running, Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's a free PCR test. Doesn't matter if you have insurance, doesn't matter what your citizenship status is. And that will be continuing at least for, we believe, another week or two. We'll keep you updated on that. We've also been able to secure and distribute almost 10,000 rapid self-tests. And we've given them out through our city council members in the borough and also community-based groups throughout Manhattan. We hope and expect that we'll have additional stock of home self-tests. We'll keep you posted on that. We still have a supply of things like masks and sanitizer, hand sanitizer. So if any of you on this call need access to those supplies, please reach out. We'd be happy to help you distribute. Thankfully, we are seeing that this pandemic is now, we're coming off the worst of the peak of Omicron, at least in terms of cases and positivity, though hospitalizations have been a little more stubborn. We've seen some slight improvement there, but not as much yet. That's a lagging indicator. And unfortunately, deaths are still going up. Again, that's a lagging indicator, but we have passed the 100 mark on a number of days in New York City in fatalities due to COVID, which is really heartbreaking. And I think we need to remember that, well, for most of us, these cases are fairly mild, especially those of us who have been vaccinated and boosted. This still is a deadly virus, and that it's possible at the pace we're on that the fatalities from the Omicron wave alone in New York City will exceed the toll of 9/11, just to put that in stark perspective. So we do still need to all be cautious, and we have much more work to really manage this pandemic to the point where it's no longer a crisis. Unfortunately, there have been other crises in Manhattan in the last couple of weeks. We had the heartbreaking loss of a 19-year-old in East Harlem, Crystal Bayron Nieves, who was taken from us in a horrific shooting. Been able to participate in several of vigils in East Harlem. We had the tragic and horrific death of Michelle Go, murdered on a Times Square subway platform on Saturday. I was able to be part of the vigil in Times Square the night before last with hundreds and hundreds of people paying respects to her. And unfortunately, we've had the death of a gentleman who was brutally attacked before my term, but who I'm sorry to say has now died, Yalpan Ma, and I'll be attending a vigil in his memory tonight in East Harlem with, I know many of you, I'm sure Xavier, Mr. Chair, you'll be part of that. All of these horrible deaths, in addition to being cause for mourning because of the loss of beloved members of our community, also point to the broader challenges which I expect that all of us, all of you, board chairs, elected officials are going to be focused on in the months and even years to come. The need, as the DA described, to tackle gun crimes, to stop the flow of illegal guns into our city. The need to confront the mental health crisis, which is afflicting our city and impacting so many vulnerable New Yorkers who are on the street. We need to do much more to help those individuals get into shelter, into housing, permanent housing, like supportive housing, get them into the treatment they need, get them into psychiatric care when needed. We have lost in Manhattan alone almost 500 inpatient psychiatric beds just in Manhattan in the last decade. And that's hurting us now because in some cases there is a wait of months to get inpatient services. We need to do much, much more to get individuals who are in the grips of severe mental health problems into the care and treatment they need, including inpatient care where appropriate. We have to do more to tackle the homeless crisis, which is also connected to the public safety challenges. And that means similar needs to our mental health crisis, getting more of the kinds of housing that we know will bring people off the street and prevent recidivism, expanded and better outreach teams. All of this will be on our agenda here on Borough Board and on our agenda as individual leaders here in the months and weeks to come. And I look forward to working with all of you on these challenges. We have also been very active on another crisis looming for the Borough of Manhattan, which is the expiration of the eviction moratorium and a potential avalanche of evictions that could impact this borough and this city and this state in the days and weeks to come. In fact, housing courts are already moving again. We have 200,000 eviction cases that even pre-moratorium being lifted were active in housing court in New York City alone. And we are extremely concerned about what this will mean for vulnerable tenants. So I joined with my fellow borough presidents about a week ago in calling for the extension of the moratorium. You're going to see a lot of work of us together. I'm very close to. We're really 4 of us served together in the council for 8 years. We're good friends. Councilmember, now Borough President Gibson, Borough President Richards, Borough President Reynoso, also now getting to know Borough President Fasella and Staten Island as well. We're going to be active together on many of these issues, as we were in calling for extension of the eviction moratorium. I also came together with a number of leaders, including I believe that the Councilmember Abreu is still on the call, who himself is a former tenant lawyer. We did a press conference a couple days ago to sound the alarm for what is about to happen in housing court, and to demand that this city's promise of full representation for every tenant in housing court be fulfilled. Really proud to have authored the legislation that enshrined that in law. But I'm worried now that we don't have enough lawyers and other resources in our legal aid system to guarantee that every single tenant now facing eviction potentially is represented, as is their right. And so we made a demand not only to put more resources into the tenant legal service system, but we made a demand of our court system that no case go forward if the tenant is not represented. Judges have that discretion currently, and largely they have been exercising it, but we've never seen the kind of the numbers of eviction cases that are about to hit us. It's unprecedented, at least in modern times. So we want to guarantee that, again, no eviction case goes forward in Manhattan Housing Court or any housing court in New York City and state unless the tenant is represented. These are the short-term urgencies that we've been addressing, but ultimately, I'm keeping my eye on the big picture. And I've had the chance to speak at many of your community board meetings in the last couple of weeks, albeit more tonight. I think it's CB's 9 and 2 tonight. Some of you have heard about really the 3 pillars that we hope will center our agenda over the long term. First is public health, not only managing the pandemic to the point where it's not a crisis, but really building out the hollowed out public health infrastructure that has served as a major challenge throughout this pandemic, ensuring that never again does any person in Manhattan have to go without the basic guarantee of primary medical care. There's a lot we can do in the city while we're waiting for action at the state and federal level. And I plan to do a lot as borough president to ensure that people have access to primary medical care, that we have the strongest possible system of public hospitals and clinics in every one of your districts, that we apply a law that I passed to ensure that New York City Care, NYC Care, that every single neighborhood has access through community clinics, as many do not today. This actually should be a topic in a meeting in the future, but the law that we passed will require that in every community board, there's at least one community clinic that is part of the NYC Care program, which will provide primary care to people who are uninsured, whatever their citizenship status. And there are some of your boards which do not currently have a facility, and we want to fix that. Let's return to that question in the future. Secondly, we have lifted up climate change, or what I would call climate justice and resiliency, to be centered in our agenda. And I really want to make Manhattan the global leader in the race to carbon neutrality. We're going to need audacious policy to do that, to make our buildings more efficient, to electrify everything, to shore up mass transit, to break our dependence on private automobiles. I also want to deal with the climate change that's already here. This is, after all, a very small island that is on the edge of the Atlantic, and we're quite vulnerable now, not just on our low-lying coastline, but everywhere, because this is a time where heavy rainfall can shut down the subway system. That's obviously not acceptable. We need to build out our infrastructure to make it stronger, greener, to take advantage of public space like parks and street trees and rooftops, to absorb storm runoff, to clean our air and to make us more resilient. This will be a theme I'll be focusing on intensely, using the levers that we have in this office, whether it's in capital money, whether it's in legislation or appointments. We're going to focus on this crisis. And then the third pillar for us is equity. Such deep inequality has been exposed and exacerbated over the past 2 years. I say exposed because it predated the pandemic, though it's been brought to the fore in painful ways. It's in every arena of life here, whether it is health in ways I've described, whether it is in education or housing or criminal justice or employment. We are going to use this office to shine a light on this inequality and to address it and to use the tools we have at our disposal to do it. And it directly intersects with climate and with public health in ways that I've described. This is the broader agenda that I hope over the months ahead we'll have time to address in Borough Board. I am so excited to work with the community boards. I myself served for 5 years on Community Board 12. I had a chance to chair a really important committee, Traffic and Transportation, for about 2.5 years. I believe deeply in community boards, that they are the arena for litigating the hyperlocal issues that impact life in this borough. I am so excited to partner with all of you to strengthen, empower, and diversify community boards in really meaningful ways. And I see this borough board, I believe it was Tricia who described this as a community board for community boards, a way for us to come together to dialogue on the issues that impact each of our communities and this borough collectively. I think we have huge potential here to do that. So really excited to partner with you and excited that community board applications are now open between now and March 1st. And so we really want to push to get the public to apply and to get young leaders, new leaders, people from all walks of life, whether they are NYCHA residents, small business owners, high school students, the minimum age is 16, people from diverse backgrounds and perspectives, whether they are wheelchair users, whether they are trans New Yorkers, which are currently underrepresented in community boards, people from all perspectives. We want you to apply if you're watching now, and I want you as leaders, community board chairs, elected officials, let's really push hard to promote this application process, which, as I mentioned, extends between now and March 1st. So I'm going to pause there. That was a longer than usual report from me. I hope you'll allow me, since it was my first borough board, to take up a little more time there. But I am thrilled to work with all of you in the months and years to come. And I guess I'll pass it back to you, Tricia. I know we have a number of elected officials who are on, who have been waiting patiently. So Tricia, maybe we can cue them for reports now. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, Borough President. Given the number of elected officials and with respect to their time, what we'd like to do is switch the agenda to make sure that those elected officials can address Borough Board, and we'll go in the order, I believe, of how they kind of joined the board meeting today. So we'll go with Councilmember Marte first, and then Councilmember Menon second, and we'll go on from there. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Tricia, and thank you, Mark. It's great to be here at my first borough board, and it's great to see my community board chairs, Tammy, Janine, and Paul, and look forward to working with you. As Mark said, these first 3 weeks were a whirlwind. We came in with a lot of things happening downtown specifically, whether it's the Soho NoHo rezoning, the Governor's Island rezoning, the spot rezoning of 250 Water Street, while also a lot of community local issues, but my team hit the ground running. And the first thing we were able to achieve in the first week was to get Mayor Adams to veto Intro 2443A, which would increase fines on folks living in joint work-live quarters. It was the first veto by a mayor in over 8 years, so it was a remarkable achievement. I'd like to thank the community board for writing a letter, but also our elected officials from Jerry Nadler, Carolyn Maloney, our state officials in supporting the community to get that done. We also kicked off participatory budgeting before we took office, actually, and we have over close to 60 submissions already. I think it's the most in Manhattan, but it's not a competition. Just wanted to throw it out there. We also joined the Seaport Coalition to do a zoning challenge to Howard Hughes at 250 Water Street. We knew this was a big demand by Community Board 1, and we wanted to be strong allies with them to make sure that there's a lot of oversight and accountability to whatever happens at that parking lot. In addition, we joined the Borough President and Councilmember Eric Botcher for I believe the 30th or the 34th Mulch Fest event. And so it was super excited to go out there in Washington Square Park and show people how to recycle their trees. More when it comes to constituent services, we've been dealing with a lot of housing issues, a lot of people scared about the eviction moratorium. My team has been in touch with Legal Aid and different agencies at the city to find how to support people during this difficult time. In addition, this past weekend, we had NYCHA developments at LaGuardia and Rutgers have no heat or no water for 4 days while it was freezing outside and in their apartments. We were working with NYCHA in communication with them day and night to make sure that these places can have hot water and heat. And thankfully, it was actually, we were able to get it resolved. But I want to follow up with NYCHA and hopefully have a town hall meeting with our community to make sure that this doesn't happen ever again. And so I look forward to partnering with Paul and the Community Board 3 on that. We also reached out to every single principal because we had a school construction authority funding deadline last Friday. So we reached out to every single principal, figured out their needs and wants and dream list, and we were able to submit a really thorough list. So I'd like to thank my budget director in doing all the work and making sure that we were able to advocate for our schools in the best way. We also met with community stakeholders and OER for the remediation site at 265 South Street in the two bridges. And we look forward to making sure that we make it the best and safe remediation because it's right next to and will be touching two Section 8 housing developments in the two bridges where we have a huge aging population. In addition to that, we're just happy to be here. The team all got their emails. We're fully staffed. We just finalized our lease to open up our district office, which will be at 117 Hester Street. We are hoping that that will be open on February 1st after we do some minor construction. But we will also have folks at our West Side office or legislative office at 250 Broadway. It's great to have City Hall in your district because you're given technically two district offices. And I'm happy to work with everyone here, my fellow council members. Great to see folks. And we already have a great relationship with Sean Abreu, Julie Menon, and looking forward to continue to grow a relationship with others. And again, we're excited to be here. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or my office. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we'll have Councilmember Julie Menon.
Hello, thank you, Tricia. Thank you, Mark. Great to see all of you. So thrilled to be here. So we've had a very busy couple weeks. First of all, I made an announcement with the sanitation commissioner that I'm allocating $120,000 of our budget to increase sanitation pickup in Community Board 8 to 4 times a day, 4 days a week. This is a significant improvement in our district because we've had real sanitation issues, and now I'm looking to extend it into the Community Board 11 part of the district for Council District 5. I also announced participatory budgeting. So like Chris, we're thrilled to be doing participatory budgeting and bringing it back. It hasn't been in this council district for many years. So we're delighted. We're getting incredible impact from the community on that. So look forward to finalizing the submissions and look forward to the voting process. I've been focused on creating a new community garden. Council District 5 is one of the densest council districts in the city and has one of the lowest amounts of open space. So I've been working with the Parks Department. I'm going to be making an announcement in the coming weeks. We have a site, very thrilled about it. It's going to be a huge win for the community. I also announced this week that I worked with the NYPD to remove police barricades in Carl Schurz Park. For those of you that have been to Carl Schurz, it's one of the big parks in Council District 5. But the problem is it has been really ridden with barricades at many of the entrances in the park, in large part due to Gracie Mansion and the protests. And the NYPD for years has just kept those barricades up for no reason at all. And so I made the request of the 19th precinct to remove them, and they did. So I think it's really, for those of you that are coming to the park now, I think you'll see a tremendous difference in terms of access to our open space. I've also, like Chris, been dealing with heat issues, unfortunately, in NYCHA. So our team has been very busy with that, making sure that heat is restored to both Holmes, Isaacs, and Lexington houses, because there have been some issues with that. We are opening our district office, and we'll be open in about a week or two. It'll be at 1470 First Avenue. So we're thrilled about that as well. And then lastly, I've been really busy with mask distribution and test distribution. We were able to get a mobile testing unit on Roosevelt Island. We got some new testing sites at St. Catherine's Park in our district. My team has been out almost every day for the past 2.5 weeks, distributing thousands of masks all over the district. And so we will continue to do that. And in closing, just say how much I am excited to be working with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we'll have Councilmember Botcher, followed by Councilmember Brewer. Unless Councilmember Botcher has stepped away. So we'll go to Councilmember Brewer.
Thank you very much. I'm in the office, so I have to have my mask on. And we were very excited because our district office, which I started many years ago, as you can imagine, is open 6 days a week and has been renovated. So it's very exciting to be here. I want to say today, as you probably know, is the first official meeting. There was obviously a beginning meeting, but there's a first official meeting of the City Council. And I'm on the Rules Committee, so at 11 o'clock we'll be announcing the committees, which I know many people are waiting to hear the answer to. We too are doing participatory budgeting. I also want to thank the mayor and the chancellor, because I have to say, in all my years in government, I've never had a mayor that every week meets with elected officials in terms of the City Council, and I think the Assembly and Senate. And there've been 2 so far, one with the mayor and the chancellor, one with the chancellor and many of the deputy mayors. And questions are welcome. And then there's minutes afterwards sent out. It's a really impressive first for a mayor, and much appreciated. Just as you heard earlier, we have submitted materials for the capital budget for the schools, at least what both the CEC and the superintendent want. And then, of course, we've spoken to all the schools. I think the problems are perhaps as big, if not bigger, than any other area in our communities, because you know, sometimes it's 40% attendance, sometimes it's 80%, but it's never 91 or 92. And you have just a lot of teachers coming back, but a lot of them have been ill, understandably. So the schools are really struggling. I'm going to work on all the issues of social workers. I'm going to get technology up to date because their websites are awful, and all of the other challenges that you know only too well. We too have been working on sanitation. I have to give, again, the sanitation department reached out, said, what can we do? And 72nd Street was horrific just because nobody had cleaned it and so on. So to the credit of the sanitation department, I've never seen this. They brought on the midnight to 4 a.m. shift, they brought shovels and trucks, and you could literally eat off the street. That was actually the night before Miss Go was killed, and she lived right there at 50 West 72nd Street, where I know every single member of the building. And then we're going to do, which is I think, again, what this administration is understanding about, is go door to door to all the businesses and say, you have to keep this place clean. And I think going with sanitation will help to make that absolutely clear. I want to thank the Borough President's office because we gave out test kits, and we had with Assembly Member Linda Rosenthal, we had a testing site. We're going to do another one. No matter where you do it, there's a lot of people. I do think we need to have more health and hospitals and not the private ones, which seem to pop up everywhere, and I don't know how good they are. I know some of them are being sued by the AG's office. And of course, we give out PPE all the time. The couple issues, we're gonna work on some childcare issues. It's very confusing if you have small children about what is the process. It's very challenging in the schools. When I was on a CEC meeting for 5 hours, the biggest issue is what is the rule for my kids? Testing, not testing, out, in, et cetera. And I think the remote is even gonna be, it's a good idea, but it needs a lot of help. Again, sometimes it's a tech issue, sometimes it's just teacher shortage issues. So I have some ideas about how to do that remote better. Anyway, childcare issues, helicopter issues, which I know are ongoing. I look forward to working with you on that. We have some ideas for that. And I think that finally, the biggest challenge is just figuring out this, as you heard earlier, I'm a big fan of the district attorney, but figuring out this, how you deal with homelessness, substance abuse, and mental health. And unfortunately, those three systems do not work together. But that's obviously a big challenge. Thank you very much. And I'm off to City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then we'll next go to Councilmember Abreu.
All right, thank you, Tricia, for having me here. And thank you to the Borough President for convening this meeting. I have impossible shoes to fill, as you mentioned before. So, look, I'm pleased to join you all this morning at my first Manhattan Borough meeting. And there's just so much work to be done. For those of you who know me, who don't know me, I'm a former tenant lawyer, and I grew up in the district that I now represent. Today, two of my biggest priorities are helping our community continue to recover from the pandemic and getting universal after-school access, after-school programs for all of our city school students. In addition to making sure that we're fighting to make sure that every family has access to a free attorney. We know that the pandemic has struck many families and small businesses. It has hurt our children. Many of them have lost learning opportunities and struggle with social isolation, which has culminated into serious mental health impacts. And after-school programs were a large part of my success as a child. And I want to make sure that every single family has access to the same education opportunities as me. I was evicted as a child and I became a tenant lawyer, keeping families in their homes. And through Mark Levine's bill, through Right to Counsel, I became a tenant lawyer. Since taking office, my team has been pretty busy. We've helped bring an end to the longest running strike in the nation, which was led by graduate student workers at Columbia University. That was a huge win for our community. We're actively seeking opportunities to build more affordable housing in the district and meeting with community leaders on that issue. We are addressing some urgent repair needs right now in our NYCHA buildings. Right now, just yesterday, our team launched an inspection at a community center at Grand Houses, where there's feces, there's urine coming from a ceiling. This place used to serve over 100 students and its rating has now been reduced and it can only now serve only 38 students. And so I'm really concerned about that. And it's something that I'm going to be working with the administration on very, very shortly to make sure that we bring it into habitable conditions. We're also working on the Morningside Heights rezoning proposal, which I'm excited for. I know that the Manhattan Borough President, former council member, and former Manhattan Borough President as well, Gail Brewer, has worked extensively on this. I think there's a lot of appetite in our district to get this, to push this through. And I'm going to be working together with Community Board 9, with the board chair, Barry Weinberg, who's also present here today. And we've been giving away a lot of COVID testing kits to folks who really need them. And I'm going to be having one in the next few days with Carmen De La Rosa, and hopefully our Manhattan Borough President will be working with him as well, and our Congressman Espaillat. I want to thank the Manhattan Borough President for the test kits he provided with us last week. A lot of families were able to benefit from them, and we're going to have we just got another 300 today from the mayor, and by combining resources with our elected officials, hopefully we can reach more people. And we've been working also with Palante Harlem to oppose the aggressive harassment from HPD on a lot of our HDFC homeowners. It's a bit over the top, and we need to illuminate the injustice that's happening. Like Gail said, and many of my other colleagues, mental health crises has been, I think it's going to be one of the biggest issues facing our city. And I know that our borough president spoke a lot about, the need for more psychiatric beds, which I agree with. And addressing mental health also addresses crime. It addresses our overall, positive well-being. And it's something that's going to be a huge part of my agenda. Something in the Upper West Side that I'm keep hearing about a lot is the scaffolding laws need to be addressed to make sure that our scaffolds aren't up for longer than they need to be. They are a public nuisance. But I also understand that why they do stick around for a while is because of the delayed repairs. So I want to take a balanced approach to make sure we can get them out from our sidewalks as fast as possible, but also in a way that's just. And finally, sanitation. We know the rat infestation in the Upper West Side. Everywhere you walk, you see rats at the size of pets, and it's something that we need to have a very, very tough conversation on. And so we have, as you can see, we have our work cut out for us, but we're going to get a lot done. I'm very confident of that, and I'll be sure to keep everyone here updated. Thank you, Manhattan Borough President.
Great. Thank you so much, Councilmember Abreu. With that, unless Councilmember Botcher is able to join us, we're going to continue on and move on with the agenda. Before we move to chair reports, I just wanted to take a minute to say how happy I am to be working with the MVP and to be working with all of you. If you don't know me, then the only thing that you need to really know is that I love community boards. I've served on my own board for years and have had a real pleasure getting to know so many of you in various roles throughout the decade plus that I've been working in government. And it's really just an honor to work with so many incredibly smart, capable people who love their neighborhoods. So one thing
Magic words. I love community boards. That's one of your many wonderful qualities, Tisha. We are really lucky to have you on the team. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Mark. One thing that we did hear, though, when starting to think about Borough Board, and I want to let you know that we're trying to rethink this charter mandated meeting to be a way to be as effective as possible and to be as useful for you. But one thing that we have heard from many of you is just that the board meeting goes on pretty long. And we already know how many hours you put into community board meetings. We already know how much effort you put in and time you put in, and that everybody else is mostly working professionals who have other jobs to do. So with that in mind, we're going to try to tighten things up as much as possible. And in addition to trying to run a tighter ship, we're going to ask that when our chairs give out their reports, that they try to limit themselves to about 3 minutes. I'll be kind this time, but I will gently nudge you if you're getting past that. Know that this isn't your only opportunity to work with us. Know that over the next few weeks, I'm actually going to be meeting with every single one of you to talk to you about the needs of your board, to talk to you about the appointment process, which Mark has already alluded to, and make sure that we're supporting you however possible. So just know that we're coming for you, talking to you soon. And with that, we'll start out with Tammy from CB1.
Well, I hate to be the first one to get the ding, so let's go as quick as I can. Welcome, thank you very much. Manhattan Borough President Levine, I'm gonna kick it off with starting. We sent a resolution in, hopefully you will get it, that passed in December. We had an annual diversity, inclusion, and equity training that the Borough President's Office sponsored. We'd like to make sure that that gets in as a yearly thing that's done several times a year at different offerings and perhaps required for all community board members, not just volunteer. That would be an awesome way to kick off. So we request that, please. If you haven't seen the resolution, you'll be getting it shortly. The Manhattan Detention Center is a major project. There's such a failure of public engagement, transparency. There were supposed to be meetings have been canceled. We have, the city insisted that they had to come no matter what, because they were going to PDC on the 18th. Right? They refused to meet any of the deadlines and meetings that we have regularly. We had to accommodate and push back in order to simply be able to comment, and yet they didn't show up at PDC. So the push and pull on that project is such unbelievable and does not match with where District Attorney Bragg is going in terms of scope and scale and the future look at what justice could and should be, nor does it correctly reflect what the opportunities are to spread economic development out throughout CB1, because there is a half a mile limit instead of tall towers in a low-level neighborhood. We really need and hope for your support to put a pause on this, come back to the table and have a real open and transparent way to look forward, not a place where the public arrives and they, even in the NAC, are not allowed to speak because you can't unmute, you can't do your own thing. It's been a one-way dialogue completely. Pursuing ahead on that same dialogue, 5 World Trade Center. Community Board 1 will lose over nearly 1,000 units of stabilized housing within the next couple of years. And here we are arguing at 5 World Trade Center over a paltry amount. That should be affordability to its maximum opportunities of multi-levels. Please do not argue with me about trying to figure out a way to desegregate schools if you aren't willing to build affordable housing in the communities and socioeconomic diversity build versus all luxury and market housing. Rolling along, city bike installations. We've had a lot of topics of city bike installations. We would love to ensure that unless there's some overall compelling reason, we are not installing city bikes on sidewalks. Our sidewalks have become incredible, precious resources in the public realm. We'd love to see them positioned near bike lanes and find a way to educate in international languages that people are not allowed to ride on the sidewalks. It doesn't seem like rocket science. Lastly, youth and ed. We had a great discussion this month. There is a major problem that the teachers and the families in the community have a disconnect. The CDC guidelines are 5 days for quarantine. The DOE guidelines for students, not teachers, are 10. So you've got a lot of kids who are out for 10 days for quarantine, where teachers are only out for 5. The ability to move the ball forward with education for both our students and the who are out and the whole class is falling woefully behind this year. So we look, and it's very difficult for a parent who can go back to work after 5 days, but their children can't go back to school. So we're looking for parity and matching those. Thank you. That's as fast
Thank you,
as I can
Tammy.
go.
You did really well. Thank you. Thank you, Tammy. I'll send you all messages when you're getting close to time. We really appreciate it again. And just so you know, if I'm looking off to the side, it's because I am a very quick typer and I'm writing down all these notes here just so that we can follow up with you too. So really, thank you again. We'll go next to Janine from CB2.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I want to first thank Councilmember Murtay and all of our elected officials for pushing the mayor to veto Intro 2443. It was rushed legislation and introduced punitive fines for jail QWA owners with non-conforming residents. So thank you to our new council member. Just want to throw out, back to rezonings. I talked about this in December. The 2012 NYU rezoning, we're still pushing on a school that was promised as part of that. The city exercised its option, and at the 11th and a half hour right before the new year, NYU offered to extend its option a couple of years. So we're pushing to make sure that school still is moving forward. In terms of bike safety and transportation, I wish you guys asked on the community board application if you own a bike or participate in a bike share, maybe next year. But CB2 continues to push for more.
Great idea. I like that, Janine.
But we continue to push for more protected bike lanes. Those are obviously my preferred places to bike. And we've assigned our 2 planning fellows to look at north, south, and east, west safety on 6th Avenue and Spring Street. Both are very dangerous. Those are death routes. And next week we're meeting with OniPod, a private bike parking membership program. So there's lots of interesting stuff happening in that space. On school safety, I just want to mention something that hasn't been mentioned, and this is an important equity issue. Everyone's handing out rapid tests, but good masks are expensive. And we, upgrade it over the holidays. My son is using this mask, and we just ran out. They're almost $1 each on Amazon. Most people can't afford that. So getting good fitting masks for the children, especially smaller faces, I think that would be really helpful at the schools, and getting them for the teachers because these are expensive. So I'm going to end on that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I believe that we may actually have some masks in stock, but we will look into this and follow up with you. Andrew is on the line and we will follow up with you later on today about if there's anything that we can help in the short term. Next, we have Paul from CB3.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me today. I just wanted to update you a little bit on CP3 since now I'm my second month as chair. The big thing that we have going on, and I'll just keep it to this, is 91 East Broadway Safe Haven. It's been a big issue for contention for us the past 2 months, at least since I've become chair. There's some definitely, how do I put this delicately, lack of meaningful communication with DHS in regard to this safe haven and what their plans are. Mixed messages, misinformation. Just it feels very much like we get left out of certain things, certain messages, and then we find out through third-party sources about what's going to happen after we've taken such a strong role in all of this. And it's been very difficult kind of navigating a lot of stuff. It's been frustrating, it's been frustrating for the district office, and it's frustrating me. So, and there's also kind of some, as I like to call, conflict of interest matters that some of our board members may have with this project and may confuse which hat they're wearing while they're serving on the board and vice versa, and when they are out in the community doing different things. So that's been generally a big concern for me. And yeah, the safe haven seems to be very contentious in the neighborhood, I understand, in the district, but we just wanted to get everybody on the same page, and it doesn't seem like everybody's even reading the same book. So I'm just trying to figure out a lot of that stuff. That's our number one thing. I understand, I have a 3-minute window, but that's the only thing I wanted to update everybody on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. Obviously, our office will be continue to be in touch with you. And this is a wonderful group because so many of our other boards have kind of faced some similar issues. I think you'll hopefully find a lot of support. Jeffrey Lefrancois has asked us, just because of a conflict, to go last. He'll be rejoining us. So next we'll go to Vicky Barbaro.
Okay, good morning again. Community Board 5 was very fortunate to have our 3 newly elected officials join us at our first meeting of the new year. So our new borough president, whom we worked with when you were council member in charge of the Parks Committee. And I think your main concern were the shadows on Central Park and the lost sunlight, which are very important for Community Board 5 throughout our district. Also, we worked with you, of course, as head of the Health Committee. So our next newly elected official was Eric, who was also not a stranger to Board 5. He was at one time a liaison, and so we're very familiar and looking forward to working with Eric. We also met District Attorney Bragg. We understand he may be coming back to address our Budget, Education, and City Services Committee in the future. We're looking forward to that. We had 2 major issues that I'll mention today. One is dealing with one of the most important issues that you've heard me talk about before, having to do with our ongoing problems surrounding the so-called Penn Station renovation. So as you know, we strongly supported Penn Station reconstruction, and we believe that Penn Station cannot be made safe and fully ADA accessible unless MSG is relocated. You've heard me say this many times. We have been advocating for this since 2012. MSG, along with the high-rise tower of 2 Penn Plaza, are part of Block 781 in this new proposal. And in December of 2020, the Landmarks Preservation Commission evaluated all the historic resources within the complex of Empire Station, and they determined that MSG and Penn Station Plaza were not eligible for local, state, or federal designation. And in fact, they did determine eligibility for a number of other buildings within the boundaries of the GPP. So the reason I'm telling you this is that, unbeknownst to us and to others, in April of last year, the State Historic Preservation Office, known as SHPO, then determined that Penn Plaza was eligible for the National Register of Historic Places, which would grant MSG and the plaza protection. SHPO did not have consultations with the public, and CB5 only became aware of this determination of eligibility by happenstance and as a result of rigorous, and I mean rigorous, inquiry in December, only a month ago. The topic also was not discussed at the weekly working group meetings held by ESD, which, as you know, were tasked with engaging all stakeholders to discuss the Penn Station renovation plans, nor were any local preservation, historical, or archaeological organizations contacted during this evaluation. What SHPO did do was inform Amtrak, MTA, New Jersey Transit, and ESD of their determination, but again, they did not notify CB5 or any of the city agencies.
Vicki, just to say you have about 15 more seconds, please. And I know you have another issue. I'm sorry.
Okay, I hope that rings true for everyone who's going to speak, council members included. I think it's very important that we be able to hear each other. This is the one chance that we all have to get together as chairs of community boards.
Absolutely.
And I think it's very important. Would you like me to stop now, or shall I?
No, I would love, you mentioned another issue, and I'd love for you to mention it to us so that we can make sure that everybody's aware of it.
Continuing on with this, then I'll try to do it quickly. In 2018, when SHPO was asked to evaluate the site, they found no merit for eligibility. Between 18 and 21, however, it led to the determination. We had strong objections to SHPO's determination of eligibility, voiced by City Club, the Empire State Coalition, Historic District Council. Needless to say, we are requesting reconsideration of this decision by SHPO. And we are also asking LPC to take a look at the surrounding historic places that we would like to see preserved. That was that. Very quickly, we had our second application having to do with zoning for accessibility. I won't go into the details why, but we denied unless, because basically what happened was there was a 20% improvement approval for this bonus, and they were requesting 29%, which is pretty unheard of. And that was denied unless certain conditions were made, which I won't go into. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. And again, we're just trying this out in order to see how it goes. We are certainly open to making additional changes, but if there are other things that you feel that are important to share, particularly, of course, some of these issues in CB5 will resonate in other districts, I'm more than happy to talk about other ways that we can make sure that this information is communicated to the rest of the borough. We absolutely want to share information. Next, we'll go to CB6 with Kyle.
Hi, good morning. I just want to start off with some sad news actually from CB6. So at the beginning of this year, as many of you might remember, Rick Eggers served as the chair of Manhattan Community Board 6 from about 2015 to 2017. He was battling an illness for the past several years and actually passed away at the beginning of the year. So everybody at CB6 is, of course, very saddened by this, and we honor his memory and his leadership, particularly in a very troubling time for CB6, particularly in locating an office space, as many of you know how difficult that might be. So I just wanted to share that news with the rest of the borough board. In terms of issues, the first thing is we are working on an issue at Washington Irving High School campus in the Gramercy area for several years regarding their trash situation. They currently place their trash in front of residences that are currently living there. We've worked several months on creating possibilities for them to move that garbage, including getting some parking spots removed to devote to school purposes. But the issue has still pertained, and we're not sure why. So we'd greatly appreciate the BP's office support in addressing this. And I'll connect offline with further details about it. The last item is about 161 Lexington Avenue, which is a stabilization bed site. We had been told by the Department of Homeless Services that operations at that site would end by December 31st of 2021. under the previous operator, which is Project Renewal. We were blindsided by the information about right before Christmas, actually, that a new operator would be taking over that site after December 31st. So it's currently in operation with BRC. Now, CB6 has always been supportive of our homeless population and those who need services, and are always welcoming to them, but it actually hinders our ability to provide support if we're not properly informed by DHS. So the information that we had been providing to the public was very quickly inaccurate and unreliable. And this is the second time that DHS has done something like this. And so again, we'd appreciate the BP support in working with DHS to make sure that they are notifying not just the community board, but the public about it in advance, way in advance, not just 10 days before something is going into operation. So we welcome BRC as we did Project Renewal. We look forward to working with the population, but one of the big things that we've seen as an impediment with this issue has been the notification of DHS to the public. And I'll end there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Kyle. And we'll be sure to be in touch and follow up about BRC and the Washington Irvine campus. Next, we'll go to CB7.
Thank you. So as we go into 2022, our committees will continue the work that they've done last year, and we'll look for new to engage in new ways in the new year. I'll just focus today on just one, which seems to be the theme, which is public safety. So a couple ways that's affecting CB7. First is that we have launched a public safety task force. I think we're one of the few community boards that don't have that as part of one of our committees. And the mandate for the task force is to sort of define what is public safety and how broad that would be. And at the end of that, they'll vote to either make the public safety task force a standalone committee and or fold it into one of our committees. So we are engaging with the public on public safety. One of the first things that I think we will look at is fire safety. And I think we're all aware of the horrible fire that recently happened in NYCHA. But unfortunately, we've had 2 NYCHA developments, and our own CB7 have local fires, and that's both Wise Towers and the Brownstones. So we're going to work with the TA leadership to help elevate that and help them both address that and deal with what those concerns are. Transportation public safety has and always will be an issue that we deal with, and we continue to look at safety in our streets. We can continue to deal with bike safety as that part of our transportation grid grows, and public safety in the MTA. And I think, as mentioned before, unfortunately, the horrible death of Miss Go is sad for all of us, but it's particularly felt here as she was a member of our community. And the last thing that I would say is I do want to commend Borough President Levine's comment on mental illness, which I think is just a scourge here in New York, and one that has not been addressed in the way that it should be. We need to create better treatment. We need to create better facilities. We need to create beds and opportunities to deal with these. But I believe that a majority, or I would say many, of the public safety issues and the quality of life issues are tied to mental illness, and that lack of investment years ago, or I should say de-investment in mental illness, has to be reinvested. And I applaud and would offer to do anything with our HHS committee to help support that. That's my report, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Next, we'll go to Russell Squire.
Thank you. So I want to start off by congratulating CB8's own Tricia Shimamura on your new position and your appointment. And I think for those who don't know, Tricia was not only a member of CB8, but also our first vice chair, co-chair of our Parks and Waterfront Committee, really did an excellent job in those roles. So I would say that our loss is everybody else's gain, but it's also our gain because we're very, very glad to be working with you in your new position. So I wanted to report on a donation drive that we did in CB8 in conjunction with our council members, Julie Menon and Keith Powers. I think everybody's familiar with the awful fire that took place in the Bronx that claimed many lives and displaced many, many families. And so we got together with our council members and collected materials to donate to the displaced families, things like diapers and hygienic materials and all clothing and all different kinds of things that that folks needed. So we had a very successful drive. We gathered up a lot of things and delivered them. So we were very pleased to help out in that way and do our part to try and help those folks. So that is my report.
Great. Thank you so much, Russell. Next, we'll go to Barry Weinberg, CB9.
Thank you, Tricia. Is my audio coming okay?
Barry, your sound's coming in.
I want to congratulate Tricia and our borough president for making an excellent hire. Tricia was a CB8 member, but she was also, for her paycheck job, as Jeffrey put it, one of our primary liaisons to Columbia University, where she worked in their Office of Government and Community Affairs, and she did remarkable work there. I'll dive right into our report. We've had a lot of important updates on new policies. We had a group from the Medgar Evers College come and present on their cannabis cannabis studies minor, which they have introduced is open to all students in the CUNY system, as well as adult continuing education. They're looking to help prepare folks, particularly legacy operators, for the new regulatory regime to legalize cannabis, and CB9 will be forming a task force to work with them, CCY and others. I think that we as a borough board might want to have a conversation about safe injection sites or overdose prevention centers. We had a presentation from the Department of Health on the site that was open CB8, CB11, and while we are not opposing this type of treatment center outright, we are concerned that Upper Manhattan might become a magnet for such sites disproportionately in the same way that own clinics have been. We are losing a community garden at 134th Street and Broadway, and we're working to try to find a new home for them. And, you know, on the health front, the Manhattanville Health Station remains closed to public services, which is really frustrating because it is Department of Health owned real estate that sits unused in our community. But we are working with the governor's office to get a vaccine site reopened at Common Avenue Baptist Church for the community. We are also looking forward to continue to work with Council Member Abreu and Borough President Levine on the Morningside Heights rezoning. That's been something that's been a priority for many years. And we are continuing to work with the residents at Manhattanville House to help them navigate the RAD Pact proposal from NYCHA. A big issue in our community remains food insecurity. So we're kind of beginning some quiet work with food pantries and other food providers in the Manhattanville neighborhood to try to coordinate their offerings and get them additional resources. And finally, we still do not have furniture for our new office. We ordered this furniture pre-pandemic in January, February of 2020. And the city has been paying rent on a second office space for us for almost a full year now. So there needs to be some question as to why it takes DCAS this long to through OMB. But you know, we're hopefully moving into our new offices at some point in the coming months, and I will wrap up there.
And Barry, let us help push DCAS on that. I assume my staff is already engaged, but we're now a DCAS tenant too, so we're happy to help fight for that.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll certainly follow up there. Next, we have Cicely Harris in CB10.
Good morning, Mr. Borough President. Good morning, fellow chairs. So good to see Tricia in her new role. I'm excited to work with her and Harlem's own Keisha Sutton, James here as well, and the additional team. So glad to see you all and excited to work with you. So for us in CB10, we are continuing to address in our housing committee, focusing on the moratorium that now that's been lifted and ERAP monies are exhausted. We're focusing on tenant protections and education in that way. So our housing committee, that's what's before our housing committee right now. Also our health and human services committee, we are continuing to object to the Mount Sinai addition of the CARES program that will be at 158th and West 124th Street. If anyone knows that area, there is a saturation of things going on over there. So we are concerned about the state of affairs currently and what this would do to impact those programs that are currently there. And finally, we had a ULURP on a 145 project that we disapproved. And just a little bit about that. And I think I brought it up before, but this project is 2 towers, 28 stories, 850 units. Only 250 are deemed to be affordable. I think it's 220, excuse me, are deemed to be affordable. And we saw that as, of course, a real issue for us, especially in Central Harlem, where 80% of our constituents are renters, 23% are rent burdened, and we see this as a real issue with displacement. Also for transportation, it would affect our transportation. If anyone knows about the 3 line, it is a very short line with only 5 cars. And with that addition of more than probably 1,800 people to that area, it just wouldn't be feasible. But most importantly, and I think the board chairs, we've all talked about this before, is the lack of preparedness and responsiveness from the developer. When you come to the community board, please come with your A game. And it's interesting that so many of our resolutions are available. So you know we're going to ask for affordable housing, you know we're going to ask for particular things, and it's just not done. And when we ask for it, there is no response. They come back again with the same proposal. Nothing has changed. And that was a key thing and why we said no to this ULURP. It just almost seemed like an affront to the community at this point that you just keep on pushing your ideas when the community is saying no. So that's where I would like to end.
Thank you so much, Cecily. And obviously, I don't, nobody even needs to say this, but obviously there are many boards who have seen the same thing time and time again. So thank you for putting it so eloquently. And we'll be following up, of course. CB 11 is next, and congratulations, Xavier and Paul, for the new chairs.
Thank you, Trish, and congrats on your new role. Keisha as well. Mark, good to see you. We will see you. It's actually tomorrow, but I'll address that for the vigil. So one sad bit of news, Amy Quiros Petrucci, a longtime board member, unfortunately passed away. She mentored very many people on our board. We're losing a lot of our institutional knowledge, which is something I'm activating many of our committees to establish a policy person who can go and do all the research. And one of our primary points is dealing with the rezoning, the points of agreement. And one of those issues that we've dealt with, and thank you, Cicely, for bringing up the issue with developers. We had our Sendero Verde project go live, and that developer came to us at least 11 times, and we kept pushing for affordable housing. And it's important upon all of us, and I look forward to working with our borough president on placing the thumb screws as reminders of what our needs are for an equitable distribution of assets, housing, and others. And that brings me to the issue of how we're dealing with the agencies, something that we were it was very disconcerting when we had the safe injection site or the harm reduction center at Nairi Place, despite our resolution calling for a moratorium as we investigated everything. We're still dealing with some of the fallout. We're very empathetic. We understand. I personally have members of my family who dealt with substance abuse. We know it has an impact, but we're looking at a more holistic solution and the engagement within the community at large. And part of that process did not occur. And so we're continuing that with our Human Services Committee. Resources. We need so many. And when it comes to COVID, we have a disproportionate amount of NYCHA developments in our building, thanks to Robert Moses and many others. If you draw a circle around South Bronx, Northern Manhattan, including Central, West, and East Harlem, we have the highest concentration of public housing on the planet, but we don't have equitable distribution of resources. The average is 30 kits per development. So if you have an 11 building development such as Carver, that doesn't even cover one of their small buildings. So we need masks, we need at-home tests. I've been attending the weekly meetings with the NYCHA TA presidents, that is citywide, dealing with the RAD Pact, being informed on how that's happening and their displeasure with it. DA Bragg is committed to come to our public safety and transportation meeting in February. We applaud him being willing to engage. Let's see, this past Friday, we did a walkthrough with DOT to deal with the intersection safety issues we've had. We've had several incidents, accidents, and deaths in our community. The other thing I wanted to say is thank you to all the elected leaders who attended the vigil for Crystal Barron Nieves after her brutal murder. Unfortunately, I could not be there because I got traced due to my youngest son being in contact with someone who tested positive. And it would have been irresponsible as a community leader for me to show up at an event and possibly being asymptomatic. And I implore everyone, we're still not through this. It is highly transmissible. And as some of you know, we lost my mother-in-law to COVID during the holidays, and she had her booster. So again, it's incumbent upon us as leaders to walk that walk. And the next thing is, and I will close out with this, the vigil for Yapan Ma is tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. at 175 East 125th Street across from 3rd Avenue. We ask you to bring white flowers and white candles as we honor the memory, because there's no tolerance for hate in New York City, because if you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. So that's my report. I will leave it with you, and thank you, and stay safe.
Thank you so much, Xavier. If you could please put those dates or those event dates into the chat so that everybody could have them, that would be wonderful.
Yep,
and I'm really very sorry about the multiple losses that you have personally seen and your community has seen. Obviously, we're thinking of you. Finally, we have Eleazar Bueno from CB12, and then Jeffrey. Excuse me.
I like how you said finally, right? I'd like to officially, on behalf of Community Board 12, welcome our new NBPO president, Mark Levine, a good friend who I know he has big shoes to fill, but he's going to do a wonderful work now in partnering with us and guiding us through his vision. I like doing my reports very short but concise. The one that I'd like to mention that's been the highlight of this month was a extremely well attended, over 100 people actually showed up, mostly younger folks, on a business of cannabis uptown Washington Heights. It was chaired by our business community development, Francisco Lopez, and co-chaired by our public safety chair, Domingo Estevez. It was well attended, as I just said, over 100 people, 105 to be precise. And it was attended by Tremaine Wright. And in this cannabis uptown borough board meeting, if you want to call it that, there was a lot of discussion about the process of getting licensing and mostly getting a lot of the younger folks who are practicing it now from the dark to the light. And it was extremely hopeful to see that younger people can and are willing to come to our board meetings as long as we have the right information for them that is appealing to them and that is really in the pulse of what's happening in our community. So I like to highlight that, and it's been part of our vision for the past 3 years that I've been a chair of Community Board 12, is to be more engaging and more participative with the people that mostly, generally, wouldn't come to our meetings. So I'd like to finish by saying that thank you for the opportunity, Mark. Let's keep the good work.
Thank you so much, Eleazar.
Thank you.
Actually, I think that our Deputy Borough President, Keisha Sutton James, has actually talked about the cannabis industry coming into the city as a real interest, a special interest. So maybe there's an opportunity for you guys to work together or to at least have a discussion about ways that we might be able to be supportive. Thank you. And then we'll go to, is Jeffrey LeFrancois
I am, Tricia. Thank you so much for indulging the swap on my first attendance at Borough Board meeting. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. Congrats to the new Borough President and to the whole team. I'm very excited. A couple of updates from Board 4 this morning. Chair Barbero from Board 5 covered the concerns and, of course, our ongoing work together around Penn Station and the redevelopment in that neighborhood. Another transportation hub in Board 4 is the Port Authority bus terminal, and we've established a really great working relationship with the Port Authority and are in ongoing meetings with them about the design and the planning for the whole footprint, which will span from 8th Avenue all the way over to 11th and 12th Avenues with a significant amount of footprint and development in play. We're working with them on the design. We are officially a participating agency on the EIS, which is a first for Community Board 4. And we're very excited about this, because we are working with them really closely and look forward to that ULURP process getting kicked off later this year. Some of my other board colleagues mentioned city bike infill in Board 4. We're always advocating for more protected bike lanes as well as more city bike stations. So our list not only appreciated what was coming, but requested even more along the way. An ongoing issue in Board 4, the MTA owned site on 54th and 9th Avenue. It's an HPD development site. It was a Hudson Yards commitment that we were supposed to get middle and moderate income housing there. The city switched, and now it's going to be only supportive housing and for the lower income bands on the AMI spectrum. And we're hoping to work with HPD on this to really make sure that we can get some, at least, middle and moderate income bands and really make it a full mix of affordable housing on this site. This ULURP was certified at the very end of December. And so we owe city planning a decision by March 15th. And so we're taking that up, but we look forward to working with the borough president and his team to figure out how we can come to a compromise, which in the end, we realize nobody will be happy with, but we hope we can consider what was fought for about 10 years ago on this site. So, and then just flagging again, Midtown Community Court and how important a resource that is, not just to Board 4, but to Manhattan and the reforms at DA Bragg. And I believe, a lot of us support and the importance of figuring out how we can get that resource open for the community. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Before we turn it back over to the borough president to ask for a motion for adjournment and any final thoughts, I just wanted to thank you all again for all of the service that you're doing, all of the work that you're doing. We know just how much work and effort you put into this, and we certainly really do appreciate it. Like I said, I'll be in contact with all of you over the next few weeks to talk about ways that that we might be able to improve Borough Board, ways that we can continue to support you, the needs that you have, again, as it relates to appointments and vacancies and that sort of thing as we look towards that next. And I hope that you do, please, again, feel free to reach out to me via email or calling me. I want to know all of you even better than I do now, and look forward to working with all of you. So with that, we'll pass it off to Mark if you have any final words.
Tricia, thank you so much. Thanks to all of you. This was an incredibly informative meeting and relatively concise. Thank you, everyone. We kept it at just about 2 hours. We have such a strong group of community board chairs right now in Manhattan and council members. And it's one of the things that gives me absolute confidence that this borough is going to come roaring back after this difficult 2 years. I'm not naive about the hard work ahead that all of us have to ensure that happens, but we have huge potential here. And to be able to partner with leaders like you really makes me feel much more optimistic about the future. So thank you for this inaugural board meeting of 2022 and of this new term. Thank you, Tricia, for chairing and leading it. And looking forward to working with all of you in the months and years ahead. Thanks so much.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Great. Second.
Second.
Thank you so much, everybody. Please stay safe. Have a good night.